I messed it up again. Welcome to The Localist, a conversation with local makers and independent entrepreneurs. I'm your host, author of the Localist book, and former small business owner, Carrie Rollwagen. So today is our first short form episode. As you know, if you're a regular listener, we usually have business owners on this podcast, and we're going to continue to have small business owners on the podcast. But we also thought we would kind of alternate, and every so often, probably every other week, we're going to come to you with these shorter episodes, kind of bite-sized episodes. Part of this is just logistically, we needed a little more bandwidth. But also, we think it's logistically better for you too, because we've heard from listeners that you like the content we're putting out, but that there's a lot, like an hour every week for local businesses is kind of a lot to absorb. So I'm hoping we can come to you with kind of some more tips and tricks that you can put into action. Some of those will be things that we take directly from an episode and kind of expand on, and some of them will be totally new. But hopefully they will help you a lot, whether or not you run your own business or are thinking about running a business, or even if you work for somebody else. So today we're going to dive in with how to find additional revenue streams. So if you're a business owner or if you work for a small business, you probably already know that you want additional revenue streams. We are all always kind of like either facing issues with finances or might be facing issues with finances, or even we just want something else that's interesting to do. So maybe you're looking for another revenue stream, or maybe you heard something saying like, oh, you should add a third leg to your stool, or you have the stool of revenue. I don't know. Because a lot of people say you should have 3 different main revenue streams, or maybe like whatever reason it is, you're just saying like, I kind of want to expand. I've been in this situation lots before. Sometimes I just wanted to expand in a business in time of plenty. Sometimes we were actually struggling. So I kind of wanted to share the story of when I worked for my first bookstore that wasn't mine. I just managed it, but it was called Jonathan Benton Bookseller. And when I took over the store, we were already in financial trouble. So the manager before me had, I don't know what had happened, but we got to the point that our suppliers wouldn't even send us books. We've done a whole episode on this. We can link to it in the show notes. So I won't get into every single thing there. But so we have this bookstore and we can't get more books. And the books we had were kind of had a dwindling selection. So it wasn't a good selection. So it wasn't the kind of thing that was going to get us the kind of money that we needed. So we had to think of additional revenue streams. At the time, we did some wild stuff. We started a design your own t-shirt bar that I'm actually working on an episode to deep dive into what that looked like, but it was just kind of using what we had and being creative. We had bands come in. That's actually really what saved the store, is we had bands come and play, and they took a percentage of the door, but we could get some cash in the door to the point that we could then pay off our bills and get the books coming again, and then kind of make money the way the store was designed to make money. Whether or not those shows were legal, it's a little bit iffy, but Mountain Brook Police, please don't come after me. But we did what we needed to do to get that money going. I would recommend maybe your revenue stream be a little more on the legal side. So we actually had a podcast about another bookstore called Little Professor, and they were working on getting additional revenue streams too. So they did go a little more of the more legal route. We'll link to this one in the show notes as well, by the way, if you want to deep dive into that. But they did things like they offered events like a Mahjong club and puzzle contests and trivia nights. And some of these were free, but a lot of them were ticketed. And so they bring in just a little bit of revenue. This actually made me think of one of the last things that we did when I was running my bookstore, Church Street Coffee and Books. Cal and I, who's my business partner at the time, we actually hosted a book recommendation night where we just had people, we charged for tickets, and people could come in and get basically my favorite recommendations from that season, Cal's favorite recommendations for that season, and people paid for this. I actually think we did do something where the money, you could either just pay for the ticket or you could roll that price back into a book. So you got a coupon. I'm not sure if it was for the whole price of the ticket, of the event, or we said like 20 tickets are $20 and you get $10 toward a book of your choice or whatever. But we were shocked that people actually paid for that, because we were like, you know, you can come every day and get our recommendations for free, right? But people actually liked the event. They liked sitting down with us and like knowing they weren't bothering us. They could talk to us for as long as they wanted. They liked being able to bring friends and kind of go back and forth with ideas with us and with each other. And it ended up being a really cool event, and we could actually make money on that. So it was like an additional revenue stream. Anyway, so what we're talking about today is kind of like, how do you find what are those areas that you could do in your business? So the first thing I'm going to say is a good tip to find that is to ask your coworkers and your friends and your staff. So often as like business owners or managers, we get stuck in our own heads and think like, we just think about a problem from one angle because that's how we're used to seeing it. But actually our staff and our friends and our family often have a totally different viewpoint that can really be helpful. So my example for this isn't necessarily a revenue stream, but bear with me, I think it ties in. So when I was putting together the website for Church Street Coffee and Books, I already had an idea of what are we going to list, that kind of stuff. What keywords are we going to incorporate? But then I asked my staff members, and they said, okay, are you doing a page on the breakup cookie, which is our super, super popular cookie? And now, had I mentioned the breakup cookie? Yeah, I had mentioned it, but I gave it the same amount of weight as I gave every other product item. And they were right that what I needed to do was incorporate, like, do more of a page on it, do more comments about it, so that if people are searching for breakup cookie, they're going to find us because, like, we are the originators of the breakup cookie. Also, they mentioned, like, are you talking about gluten-free products? Because at the time we had a ton of gluten-free offerings, definitely more than I think other cafes were doing at the time. So because I asked them for input, I got way better ideas than I was coming up with myself. And the same thing is true for, like, what else do you think we should sell? What do you think we could offer? What could we monetize? What could we train people on? Ask the people around you, and they may have some really good and creative answers. Another idea is to just list your unrelated talents and see if there's any crossover. So what the concept or the example I have for this is when I had a Kickstarter campaign. So when I self-published the Localist book, I did a Kickstarter, and part of the point of the Kickstarter was to raise money, which is what Kickstarters are for. But also part of the point of that was to be kind of a marketing campaign for the book, to get people excited, to get people involved. And so the way a Kickstarter works, like, usually you offer little prizes for different levels of what people would buy. And I had some book-related things. I think my friend Kelly did some different quotes, lettered them so they would look really nice so people could buy those. And I had some Localist-related things, like my friend Andrew did some Localist t-shirts. But then Sri, which is a guy I worked with, mentioned, well, you knit these little, they're like knitted koozies. I call them cozies because I think it's cuter. But he's like, you make these knitted cozies. Why don't you offer them as a Kickstarter prize? At first I was like, why would I do that? It doesn't relate to buying local, and it doesn't relate to books, or, like, it doesn't make sense to me. But then I listed them anyway because I was desperate, and they became like one of the most popular of the gifts. Now, I'm not saying that if you need another revenue stream, you should make knitted cozies. That's probably not right. But I got to that because Sri encouraged me to think outside the box of, like, what I thought made sense for this. And the same thing can work for a revenue stream. Like, list talents that you have, things that you could teach that don't necessarily make perfect sense to the business. Because if you just brainstorm a lot of those things, a lot of times one or two of them are going to match up as, like, oh, actually, I could combine this talent with this thing we offer as a business and come up with something, like, really cool and unique. And then my last tip is going to be to steal ideas from other people. Always a cool thing to do. But the thing about business is, once we steal an idea and really shape it and make it work for our business, for our customers, and we really should be changing it so much that it's not stealing at all. It's more like inspiration at that point. But some of the things other people do, like selling digital products. Like we had Morgan Johnston on the podcast talking about the digital workbook that she released as a PDF. A lot of us could think about like, okay, what are we experts in? What do our businesses do? Maybe you could offer a PDF. Like, so I'll talk about a bookstore coffee shop because that's the business I had. You can extrapolate from your own business. But say we did maybe we do a PDF on, coffee recipes you can make at home. And maybe you sell that. Or maybe you do a PDF on how to learn to do a coffee tasting and you can sell that. Now, that's not going to be a high price point. It's going to be maybe $5, maybe $10, but you could make a few of these available. Maybe you even make them free to people who, if you have a membership program, the bookstore I mentioned, Little Professor, you can be a member there. Maybe members get the PDF for free, but other people have to pay for it. You could do different things like that. Or you could do like a PDF on book recommendations, or here's your summer reading list for adults, like that. You may be able to charge for that, you may not. But even if you don't charge for it and you just like say, I like this idea to do like adult summer reading and just have some fun summer reading type of books, you could give the PDF away for free, but like you could click to buy and those purchases could come from you. So that's not necessarily an additional revenue stream, but it is an additional like point of entry for people to buy things from you. You could start a subscription service. Like I mentioned, Little Professor has that, which it's not exactly, is it a subscription? I don't know. But they have a membership that you can buy. I think their membership is maybe $80 a year. And you get 40% off bestsellers and 20% off all other books. You also get some other perks like free coffee, one of my favorite perks. But you could start a membership, like depending on the kind of business that you run. Maybe that's something, or a subscription, maybe that's something people would pay for. Maybe even you start a subscription of tips or something over email that you send out. Now, those have to be like really valuable for people to actually want to pay for them, but it may be something that you could do. You could teach a course. Again, this is like stealing ideas from the internet. You see all these people teaching courses. And I know like our instinct is like, well, nobody really wants to pay to learn what I have to offer. But I think you'd be surprised how many people kind of do want to pay for what you have to offer. And you could maybe rent out an area that you have. Like if you have, you can see if you're watching or here if you're listening, that I'm here in the podcast room at Infomedia. Now, this is something that we offer to our clients as well. Like they can rent time in the podcast room if they want to do a voiceover or a podcast or something like that. Or maybe you have a space like Lady Bird Taco, who's been on the podcast. They actually close at 4, but then you could rent their space after hours. So that's an opportunity for them to make extra money. Or you may just maybe you offer a conference room that people can book, or one of your offices is a place that people can book. Essentially look around and see what do you have to offer and can you monetize that some way. Another idea that I think that we should all steal is I've seen a lot of people now selling templates. So they'll sell even a Google Doc template or a spreadsheet template or a Canva template. So it's the work that we're already creating to run our businesses. And then we just take that and make it into a template and actually charge for a download of that. So you can look a lot of places for inspiration on how to get an additional revenue stream. Different influencers are a really good inspiration for this because a lot of times that's the only way they're monetizing their business, that and ad revenue. So it's really important for them, and we can kind of see what are they doing and is there a way that we can do it. Now, one tip I would give is if you're going to monetize your business this way, try to start with like a minimum viable product. If you're thinking like, oh, I could sell a course, maybe just start with a PDF. Like maybe don't even sell it, but just give it away or sell it for something low like $5. Do something that is really doable and within reach before you spend a lot of money on like a platform that makes courses and get really far into this and then find out I don't have a kind of market that's going to connect to this. So no matter what you're doing, if you're looking for an additional revenue stream, especially if you're a small business and you just need to get something started up, I would look think smaller, think minimum viable product and kind of start there. Okay, so I hope that you have enjoyed our first solo short podcasts, definitely leave us feedback on this. You can find me at C Rollwagen on pretty much any social media, and you can find us online at infomedia.com. Infomedia is our sponsor. And you can also find me at carrierollwagen.com. And let us know, like, do you like this format? Do you want to hear more of it? What kind of topics do you want? You can also always sign up for my newsletter, so you can do that at C Rollwagen on social media. There's a link in my profile. You can do that at carrierollwagen.com. And I write about a lot of the same stuff in the newsletter. Okay, so the podcast, the Localist podcast, is written and produced by me, Carrie Rollwagen. Our sponsor is Infomedia Studios. They can help you out with any of your photo, video, or podcast content for your business. If you're interested in that, hit up infomedia.com and fill out the contact form. Our showrunner is Taylor Davis. Our outreach manager is Jen Tucker. And our marketing coordinator is Elena Harmond. So, gosh, where do I go? Like, I almost made it all the way through in one take. You can email us suggestions about post content, interview requests, and more at podcast@carrierollwagen.com. And until next time, here's to thinking global by thinking... Wait, I messed it up again. Until next time, here's to thinking global by acting local and putting small shops before big bucks.